Yo, what is good, everybody? Midday video here today, as I'm gonna be at a food shelter till pretty late tonight. So I'm recording this currently 4 p.m. Where I am, and I'm not sure when it's gonna be uploaded. So whenever it's uploaded, we'll see. So very interesting video here today. The markets are at a very interesting spot, very overextended, as we all know. But there is one issue with that. There are a lot, and I mean a lot of people shorting right now. Which, if you're a bear and you want this to drop, that's a big problem for you. So I'm going to show you kind of the metrics of where the short position kind of stand. You're going to see what I'm talking about. So with all that being said, we're just going to get into it. Make sure to share the video some love, give it a like and subscribe. Let's get into it. So to start off here, of course, we got oil. Oil, very interesting. As if you watched my last video and the video before that, we were kind of looking for upside after this drop because we were looking at that MACD, and while we finally broke out of that range, what we didn't get was this MACD going lower, and what it actually did was, it kept staying up, which kind of showed that the bulls were resilient and they were probably going to make a comeback, and that's exactly what they've done. Now this is a major resistance area, so it's tricky because if you remember, we kind of talked about that news where those third world countries are cutting back on production, and that kind of artificially, not really artificially, it just raises the prices of oil, and so fundamentally this definitely has a reason to go up, and definitely has a reason to keep going up. So it's a really interesting scenario with oil here because, I mean, normally you would see something pull back like this after this kind of move, after that gap up. That's a massive gap up, which should fill. I'm not sure when that would fill, but yeah, maybe. I honestly would be expecting some sort of news event to kind of let this cool off a bit. Yeah, you're starting to get divergences on the higher time frames. So if you're a bull and you've been riding this thing up, it might be smart to take some profits as you're in a massive resistance. We've come up to a massive resistance with a very unsustainable move. Just the one thing is that fundamental factor. So oil, very interesting spot. I would be looking for that gap to get filled, but if it manages to get over this region, like over 84, and it can kind of hold, it might keep going. So I guess it's just kind of something you gotta play as it goes for now. Natural gas, we're looking for that upside, especially looking at the weekly here. This is finally starting to show signs of like recovery or going back to bullish. The weekly MACD just crossed over and the histogram is green, so that's really telling me that this is more than likely going to go on a multi-month run, multi-week, multi-month run to the upside. And it was really putting up a fight at $2, like 2 flat. You can really see that. It even did a stop loss hunt, which, man, those things are kind of evil on natural gas. They do them all the time. So you can see the low is 194, and yeah, everybody had these stop losses right under these candles, and it's definitely under this candle. They broke it and rocketed it up. So that is honestly kind of irritating to even see. I didn't play that, but that just kind of gets on my nerves knowing how many people definitely got stopped out by that move and then instantly ripped up to the skies. So that's just what natural gas does. Really painful kind of factor of trading it. You can see it does this pretty much like all the time. So just something you kind of got to get used to if you're trading this, and just be aware of. But we finally broke out of this range. It's been stuck in since late March. It could be upside from here. You got a gap up here, which I would expect that to get filled at some point. So keep an eye out on natural gas for a pretty decently well extended run to the upside. I would probably like to see this region hold at least, and if it can do that, I really think I'm only looking at upside from here. So definitely keep an eye on this thing. Yeah, in the unlikely case that it breaks like these two candles, then maybe switch that bias. But even now, just looking at the higher time frames, it's looking pretty decent. So on to DXY here. This is the channel we've been looking at. still just kind of bouncing within that. But now what it's starting to do is it's not completely hitting the bottom trend line. So this is when you start to kind of look for that bullish breakout. Um, when it starts to like do something like this where it's falling and then it doesn't hit that bottom line anymore and it starts kind of doing more sideways action, that's when you're kind of looking for some upside. So I'm not completely sure yet. We got to see if it's going to hold that breakout. You can see back here it did a fake breakout, went for a new low and then came back up. So one thing I'm looking for right now is divergences. I don't think we have a divergence yet. Yeah, so we don't have a divergence yet. So maybe we even do something like one more low into this region. You got a couple of supports. So we'll see. We'll see what it does. Yeah, I guess just the two things to be looking for is if this line holds, and if it doesn't, look for those supports. On to Apple here. So Apple, this thing is going to get annihilated at some point. I would say, I wouldn't necessarily say soon, but once you start getting towards the end of this line here, so maybe like early mid May, you could see some major uh, destruction on Apple here. But in the meantime, I've talked about that target at the mid 177s. You have a very small gap here, which sits at like 170. So you're in this rising wedge, which inevitably, you can even see you got divergences forming, massive MACD resistance. So at some point, it's going to get obliterated. But for the time being, it's so resilient. So this thing could just keep going up. You're coming up to a really big, yeah, if you can see this line right here, I'm actually just going to draw right now. You over that trend line. So if it holds above this, you're just gonna see this nice melt up. I think. Maybe it gets rejected. You have a gap right here, and Apple's pretty good about filling its gaps, but I don't know. If it holds that trend line, same thing with kind of the DXY. If it holds that line, I'm looking for upside, but if not, maybe look for these gaps to get filled. But I don't know. Maybe be patient. There's kind of a lot of things you can do here. I think really the big thing is, well, this is that main wave structure we're looking at right now. Normally you would see the C wave go to that 100% extension, which makes it equal in length to the A wave, but it can also stop at the 0.618, which it is doing, but that doesn't happen too often. So I think I'm looking at a little more upside. You have a few reasons for that, but I think in the future, in the coming weeks, it should see some major pain. So keep an eye out on Apple, maybe for a little more upside, but inevitably it's going to get destroyed. Tesla, that triangle we're talking about, it's holding up. It's holding up well. What I would like to see is a return back up to this line, maybe even some more consolidation, but really I would just like to see this line get tested, and then from there we'll see breakout, breakdown. We'll just have to see. Tesla, again, that's kind of something you just kind of have to play as it goes. It's testing this big line here, which I've had drawn out for kind of a long time, and you can see it kept getting rejected. So if it breaks out, I think you could see some nice green candles. But into this resistance, you'll want to see what it does there. Not too much else to say other than that. Another thing quickly is that 4-hour MACD. There's a MACD support trend line right here, and it's about to cross over. Histogram is just barely green, so it's definitely trying to turn bullish. Amazon, looking for this big move to the upside because of this massive, massive falling wedge here, but it's taken a little longer than I'd like it to. So it's over these trend line resistances. Funnily enough, I'm not sure why it's like drawn out like this. I think I maybe use on log scale. I guess not. Yeah, really just I guess looking from this trend line to this trend line, you can see it's over these resistances right now. So really interesting spot. Yeah, I'm not sure I do it all the way back there, but regardless, you're testing a pretty decent trend line here with these two tops. So again, I think it's on the daily. It's building up a decent amount of momentum while it's going sideways, or the weekly side. yeah, so while it's been going sideways, the momentum has been building up, and uh, not sure what just happened. Um, Let me put it back up. So while it's been going sideways, it's been kind of showing this steady upward momentum. So I would like to see some sort of move to the upside within, I'd probably say like a week or two, or else that momentum might fail and it can just come right back down. So for now, I'm looking for it to hold and hopefully break up to the upside because there's some good upside, and definitely a lot of incentive to get up there. So again, we've been talking about that 100. Yeah, it's sitting right here. If it can get over this, there is really no supply. Oh, I see what that MACD is now. I don't know why it's overlaid. Yeah, it's sitting right at this resistance. So if it can get over that, there's some upside. That's all I have to say. So biotech, we got the move we were looking for back up into resistance. We were looking for that 40% move from the low. Um, nothing really crazy, I guess. That's what we were expecting, a move back up into resistance. And from here it gets a little interesting. If you break above it, which I don't really think is too likely, I mean, once you get into resistance, that's a good spot to just take your profits, sit, and wait for what it does. So we got the move we were looking for on biotech. Um, we were looking for a rip. That's what we've been saying. The big thing was we were saying like maybe wait a little, see what it kind of does around this support, and maybe you can start ripping back to the upside. So I was a little unsure of if it was going to be able to do it, but there was definitely a pretty good probability, pretty good chance that it was going to rip back up and at least test that resistance. So biotech, now that we're here, we're just going to be waiting for kind of its next move. Semiconductors, interesting spot here. We could finally see the drop. Nvidia, all these people have been shorting it all the way up, and it just keeps melting up, it keeps squeezing, and that is a problem for when you're trying to short something that just keeps going up. It just doesn't stop, and then once everyone is finally stopped out, everyone's done shorting, that's when it falls. So that could be right now. You can see we're testing a decent trend line here. So if this breaks, there's some seriously good downside. And looking at the main ETF, SOXX, we're testing a big trend line, and we're actually underneath it. So we have these gigantic divergences. Divergence, I guess. If this plays out, what we really need to break, what the bears need, is a break under this region, which will invalidate this 5-wave scenario. So if that gets invalidated, you will see a lot of red. A lot. So that's what I would really like to see. But if we get up to 500, which it's looking difficult, I mean, Nvidia and those stocks are already up so high. You would need them to go so much higher for this to get up to 500. So it would be really difficult for that to happen. It's possible, I guess, but I mean, just be logical. Think about it to yourself. Can the semis really take it this much higher? Because that's pretty far away. So, I mean, it's possible, I guess. That's like another 15%, 15%, but we'll see. We're gonna see what this trend line does. If it can stay underneath it, there is a lot of downside. The VIX, interesting spot. I don't know if I trust it. You're underneath these trend lines, this one main trend line here, which I'm sure everybody is watching. I would not be surprised to see some kind of random rip right back up. It does that kind of a lot, actually, traps a lot of bulls. But this is a pretty solid break of that trend line, as you can see. That's pretty solid. So, interesting spot on the VIX. I mean, if it stays underneath it, there's some downside. You got some support down here. You got a lot of support right here at 12 to the low 10s. But for now, I would be a little skeptical of this. Divergences aren't necessarily something I really look at on the VIX, but you have divergences, so something just to keep in mind, I guess. VIX, interesting spot. We'll see if that trend line can get reclaimed or not. Okay, on to SPY. So I think the first thing I want to show everybody is this. So this data is from a few days ago, like Thursday, Wednesday, so it's not necessarily that old, but it's just a few days old. But the point is uh, the short positions are at like almost like they are at record levels. The only time it was more than what it is now is in 2011. So when there are this many short positions, it takes like the way things drop is by people shorting, driving it down, people selling, and when you already kind of like maxed out with the amount of people that are shorting or can short that want to short, it's really hard to just get extra momentum to drop it. So if like the market doesn't drop, all of these short positions start to go underwater, and it becomes this domino effect where some people start covering, and then it just creates this parabolic move to the upside, where all of these short positions are going underwater, and they take their losses, they get margin called, liquidated, and it returns to the mean reversion. It's always going to return to the mean reversion. So at some point, all of these shorts are going to cover. They're going to take their profits, or they're going to take their losses, and it's a really tricky spot here. Because I was looking for that drop right around here, but it the bears failed 4 attempts, I believe what it was. 4 attempts to follow through. I'm going to go in a little close. So these were the 4 attempts here. This one, this one, this one, and this one. You had a nice breakdown, but ripped right back up. So it's a really kind of annoying area. I had to take my loss on my short position because I believe it was right here once we got above this high. Then it starts looking really unlikely for the bears to be successful in finishing that drop, because it's kind of, and even today, it's starting to look a little bullish, like continuation. So the big thing here is 420, 4200 and 4100. This is just kind of this range it's stuck in between. If it can get under, you can see a lot of downside. If it gets above 4200, you can see a lot of upside. Like I'm talking like 4400, 4300, which I've been talking about for quite a few months now, and it's at this really annoying spot where it's just stuck. You have, it's up so much, but like the bulls, it's not going to be the bulls that drive it higher. It's going to be the short positions that they're going to be forced to close these positions, and that's what's going to drive it to the upside. So for now, it's kind of a waiting game. We're going to see which way it breaks. Another quick thing I want to show is SPY, just kind of the volume profile where all the bulls and bears are just kind of sitting and waiting. So right here is a massive supply zone, but once you get over this, there's not really any like significant zones where sellers are just kind of waiting. You're going to have resistance like at like these gaps at these previous highs, but if you're looking at the volume nodes, there's not really an area above this where there's going to be major selling, major buyers, if you know what I mean. Just those supply and demand zones. So if you get above like 418, it just might go straight up, and it just might look something like this. So there's no telling how high it could go from there. I'd be looking at 4300, definitely as kind of the first stop, and you could see a massive drop from there as well. Also, you're coming back up to this trend line here, so if you hit that, that's another kind of incentive to test it and then drop. But a lot of things to kind of put into perspective, so I think this is a good week to kind of just be a trader, let things do what they want, just let these future plays set themselves up. So that's where I'm going to end this video. If you watched the whole thing through, make sure to show it some love, give it a like, and subscribe, and peace out, guys.